Hey everyone, I am Joe Russo, and welcome to a very special episode of Pizza Film School. Joining us today is visionary director Zack Snyder. Do you ever have anyone that was intensely method on any of your projects?
Oscar Isaac's not intensely method, but like an amazing actor and really cool, but very liquid, very.
I try. I do. And all I ask for in return is just for respect.
And Oscar was great. He made me actually sort of appreciate the style of unpredictability a little bit, you know.
Downey's like that a lot too. Downey doesn't like to do the same thing over and over. And in fact, he'll have multiple.
Be like, did you photograph that last one?
Yeah. He's a 3 or 4 taker, but he'll also, you know, he has part of our process with him is we meet on a Sunday before the week of shooting, and then we write alts to everything he's going to say. So that, you know, each take he can look at the next alt and try something different, see if it leads him somewhere more interesting than the last take.
Oh,
you know?
That is interesting.
And it's a great process because you get a lot of options in editorial, but nothing repeatable, you know, so you're always dealing with. But, you know, you go look at most Scorsese films and he's not paying a ton of attention to, you know, when the cigar is in the mouth or not. He's cutting for performance,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
So, you know, that's not something really to prioritize. You know, with Downey, you're prioritizing the magic and not really, you know, where he put the glass on the table each time. Yeah.
It was funny because I was listening to the Gucci panel. I was watching that, and Ridley was talking about this sort of 6 camera shooting, you know, which I'm
He did
not
6?
What? Yeah, which I'm not really, you know, and how they would do a lot of times if they were doing a walk and talk, they would land in 6 cameras. So like they have the 6 waiting. So like the real drama happens when you land, not in the walk-in. The walk-in's a 2-shot, no matter what.
Yeah.
And you land into 6 cameras, like 2 stacked close-ups, 2 stacked close-ups, 2 wide cameras,
Like a
you know,
medium
one and one low, one
yeah.
weird low one that doesn't feel like a mistake.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's insane. That's intense.
And probably all great shots.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing that's really interesting is that you always imagine, you know, when you say Ridley Scott's like a visualist, all right? Like you're like one of the great sort of visual, like image makers, you know? But then you think about like, okay, and I think to my way of thinking, like 6 cameras, I don't know how to light for 6 cameras. Not that them all look good.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It would give most DPs a heart attack.
Somebody's getting front lit.
But
yeah.
But you know, it's just cool. It's just like.
But he was prioritizing what, performance, right?
Well,
And
because, you know,
improv.
it allows you to have coverage for every version. They were talking about Jared Leto's performance, and Jared never does the same thing twice.
Right.
Really, Jared's pretty. Actually, now that you mention it, I forgot about my experience with Jared doing the Joker, and it was amazing. But he had the script, but he really built the thing. Like he would go, and I'd say, "Oh, that was cool," but I'm not sure that one idea there. Could you bring that earlier? And he would do it, but it would then the end would be a little different. You know, it always kind of.
Right.
He'd always get there, to the end, but there'd be some.
It's a journey.
Some little cul-de-sac that he would get in and come back. But anyway, so that was, but with the 6 cameras, the dialogue, the riff had the reactions from everybody as well, right? So if he said something crazy,
you
he
got
still
it.
had the other guy.
Yeah. Or someone improvised opposite him. You don't have to write it down and go, when we get to your side, we got to remember.
You could do that again.
Right, do that again, and maybe it doesn't have the same spontaneity
so pretty,
now. And
I was like, wow, that's pretty incredible. But.
Terrio's process is notes, you know, post-it notes in a baggie, right? Is there a process for you where you come up with scenes and imagery that inspire the
100%,
script before you write the script?
Yeah, 100%. I'll make a lookbook. I'll make a lookbook for myself if I'm writing. So I'll make. Sometimes I'll formalize it and get it bound and turn it into like a real thing. Often I'll just, you know, have it just photocopies of images. And a lot of times it's paintings or photographs or something weird.
And the folks that come work with you when you're writing
I'll show
something,
that to everybody. Yeah.
you show it to everybody
Like,
as
this is,
inspiration.
like imagine, you know, guys wearing these South American masks, or imagine, you know, like, what if, and even if that, imagine that was over here and it had nothing to do with that, but like something.
Are
like
they fleshed out at all, or are they more just
it's a little
images
bit,
for inspiration?
I have it kind of in sort of a story order, you know, like this is when they arrive in the village, it looks like this, you know, and then when we go, especially in a really basic kind of, very sort of methodical. And then every now and then what I do like to do is I'll always have a bunch of really weird images that I'm not sure how they work in the story, or if they do. But I'm like, this is compelling. And like, and normally it's a really compelling image, you know? It's like I'll go like, what about this? Like, I don't know if it's in the movie, but like just.
That's your version of Post-it.
Yeah, and everyone will be like, holy fuck, that is weird. Like, I don't know if it has anything to do with the movie, but it's cool. But you know, and then like some kind of version of it will end up somewhere though sometimes. But every now and then you do need a little shot of electricity, you know, because everything will get,
You need
once you kind of
inspiration.
line everything up. You know, it's like we were talking about, I was, you know, the movie I'm working on now, and just this idea that sometimes when you talk about length, right? And say you have this idea and they say, okay, what would it look like this? A lot of times you go, well, the 2-hour version of this, the exact 2-hour version of this, we know. Like, it won't take long for you to say, oh, I guess you're right, on page 15 they need to leave, on page 30 they're gonna have to come back. You know what I mean? Like, depending on the size, it kind of starts to get written by the format a little bit, right? You
Very
know,
much, yeah.
Like, you're like, oh, geez. Like, if I really compress this, there's no other way to get to the end unless all these things happen in a certain kind of very kind of structured format to get you there. I think that that's where the kind of, sometimes that little bolt of electricity or that little kind of, even a thing that might not make it, but just gets you to have to think, you know?
Sideways,
You know, just kind of turn it on its ear a little bit and you're like, oh, you're right. We have been kind of thinking about this one way for a while. And also, you know how sometimes you think about something one way for a while and you kind of feel like it's done.
Yeah.
And then you might have to go back and look at it again. And it's sometimes that for me is uncomfortable, but also probably really necessary, you know? Like, I find that I sometimes have gone like, that was finished. Why are we cracking that open again?
Yeah.
And that's probably needs to get cracked open. That's why.
Even if you refine one or two key things about it without changing it essentially, you've just made an advancement.
Yeah.
You know, and it has to do, because it's all interconnected, right? A script is really, you lay it out linearly, right? It's just words and it's a structure, you know, and it follows a fairly predetermined format that's existed for almost 100 years at this point.
Yeah, we know. Yeah.
Right? So, you know, at a certain point, you touch something over here and it's going to affect something over here, and you got to calibrate those, and when you aren't, that's when you get into trouble.
The other thing you have to resist sometimes is like not breaking something that's not broken.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's like another skill, because you might have it. There is like, you know, it's easy to kind of get used to an idea, even if it works, and then want to go back and mess with it because you're just used to it. I think for me, it's always it's a piece of discipline to go like, you know what, that works. Let's not fuck that up, guys. Let's talk about something that it's not working, because we can break a thing that's working easily. You know, it's easier to break a thing that's working than fix a thing that doesn't work.
Our code word for that we always do is like, we always say, let's go back to the script. Let's get back to the script.
Oh, sure.
You know, because you're right. You can feel yourself drifting, and sometimes you drift somewhere great, but sometimes you're just like, you're starting to lose the form. And everybody's starting to forget where we were and where we're going.
The narrative, right? The scene has a certain job it's supposed to do, and you know, if it starts to drift away from what that job is, then the next scene has lost its, you know, the domino in front of it.
Yeah, the whole
you know?
thing, yeah.
And it's going to miss it
In
when
fact,
it falls.
that's one practice we have that's kind of like very basic is we will often, before we shoot a scene, once we've got all the actors on set, we get all the actors on set, we will read the script with them out loud, and we will read the action lines. It's almost like a grounding process for everybody. It's just like, let's remember all the most banal details of what this scene is, you know, and what we're all doing
that
here.
everyone's spent in a room thinking about for a year.
Which is cool too,
So that
because
when
a lot of times also, as you know, especially when the actors get the scene, it really becomes all about the words for them. You know, it can.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that when you're like, oh, over there, the bomb is ticking down, right? Like
Right.
the actual bomb is on the floor, and you can see that there's whatever it's ticking down.
Yeah.
And they can just get in this, and when you probably read that out loud, they go like, oh shit, that's right.
Yeah,
I gotta relate
Right,
to it.
'cause
Bomb scene. It's not a me thing, I guess here.
Yeah, because you go through the work in the script of reminding the reader that that's happening. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like, again, it's reminding the viewer now
Yeah,
that that's
that's
happening.
cool, that's
It's
good.
like, yeah.
What's your process like with reshoots? Because I've heard stories where you'll get people come over to the house and you just shoot things in
I
the backyard.
did that on
against the
Justice
green
League.
screen.
I had never
Right.
really reshot anything. We did a reshoot on Sucker Punch that we didn't use.
Yeah.
I had never had a reshoot until Justice League. And that was really more about filling out some of the ideas from the original
Right.
idea. And so there was a bunch of, and at that time it was, COVID had started and the studio was, they had we had a certain amount of money to do it, and there was no really reshoots in the budget. So I just was like, well, I'll just do it myself. Just have the guys come over and we'll just shoot something here in the yard. I did a fair amount of that. Wasn't like real scenes. It was
Right,
just like
right.
little piece
Pieces,
here and there. Yeah.
transitional pieces.
Yeah, I feel like you could do that. I've never had to do that, but it seems like a really easy with a small, setup. You can
Yeah.
do a lot of that if you felt like.
Yeah, knock those things out. We love reshooting.
I know
We-
JJ does
yeah.
that. He has like a
What little pickups?
little
or-
pickups like
yeah.
at
We
at
built
the-
a small
yeah,
stage
exactly.
over here,
Oh, yeah.
next door, just next door.
Just for
yeah,
pickups,
just
yeah.
for that
Oh,
purpose.
see, that's cool. That's what I mean. Yeah,
yeah.
like you could a green
in.
screen and a thing. You could pretty get away with murder.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
I mean, especially in this day and age with the technology.
yeah.
It's interesting to see where we're going. I mean, we're really compelled by this notion of like using something like the Unreal Engine to generate our sets and shooting virtually.
Yeah.
And, it just gives you a lot of options. You don't have to travel. There's, you want 11 locations in the studio. It's not going to give you a budget to do that. Right, there you go. You can create it.
Yeah.
So you're in a way you're democratizing the craft because some younger director who can't garner a larger budget but has an ambition.
You can't shoot in the Vatican. And
Yes.
You're like, well,
Right.
if you go in there, the Vatican's in there.
It's in there, right? And it just, but it's an interesting. How do you
It's not
feel?
the Vatican, it's the Radican, because it's
right.
copyright infringement. It's very similar.
But how do you feel about that process? Like technology.
I think it's cool.
and-
For me, since 300, I've kind of been shooting that way a lot. You guys have ended up, I'm sure, in the last Avengers movies, with more green screen than you
Than
thought.
actual,
Yeah,
There's
right,
more green
like-
screen than there is sets.
Sets,
Yeah.
right? So you're looking around going like, holy shit, is this who we are now?
Yeah.
Or were
Right,
these
right.
guys
Yeah.
with no set?
Look at the tennis ball.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a monster.
Yeah.
The idea of this sort of virtual production that's really interesting is that it does come back around. The green screen environment is an exclusive world, right? Like there's not a lot of guys that can make a movie with no sets. Because as it is now, there's 1,000 visual effects artists between that green screen and it being in your movie.
That's right.
In the virtual production version, anybody who walks in there with a camera,
Can point it.
the desert is
Right.
there.
The
right?
environment,
And they can
yeah.
go and film it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, it demystifies visual effects a little bit.
Yeah.
It kind of, the thing that I've always found a little off-putting about a big green screen environment is it's not really engaging, for anybody, even for us, even for
Yeah.
the filmmakers. We know we've been looking at the concept. We know what it is. And the actors especially are like, I don't know where the hell I am. Like, I don't
Yeah.
I guess, okay, whatever you say, yes, I'll do it.
But for
I think-
camera operators too, right? It's
Yeah.
just like there's
I don't
nothing
know,
to grab
tilt up
onto.
to the
It's like-
mountain. What mountain?
Yeah, yeah, right. No, it's a little higher.
Yeah, exactly. It's a small mountain. Anyway, but I do think that the introduction of this kind of virtual productions or as a concept really brings sort of physicality back to visual effects and sort of a fantastic world. You really can, you can feel it and see it. They can put Atmos in. It can really feel like you're in a place, which is really just
It's a whole new
you're
thing.
more passionate about it, filming it. Like I did a small thing that we were just really more of an experiment. And I was really fascinated by they were like, okay, we have a cave set, with light shafts coming through these holes in the ceiling. And then we were like, literally you know, okay, now we're in like this, you know, forest. And it was the same rocks, but suddenly they didn't look like they worked in both spots. It was just, I was like, wow, this is really, and even the focus and everything, the wall understood the depth of field as well. So like everything, like, especially in the eyepiece was like, wow, that's scary. That's like, feels like I'm there. So I think there's huge potential and a hugely exciting future for that technology, if it, you know, as it becomes more available to like, and also scale, I think, you know, from this to like also being able to have, you know, 100 guys standing around inside of, you know, a giant environment would be just, it's just cool, which they're doing now anyway, everyone's doing it. But what was funny, because like on the movie that we're working on now, we ended up, we took a deep dive into it, and it just, the reason why we ended up not doing it in the end was because we have these big war scenes, and I had like 100 guys, you know, and we were just like, I don't even, like, the amount of French reverses I have to do, everyone's brains were exploding, because, you know, like, you know, you're always like, I'm like, oh, just flip the set again and flip the set again. And then for his reverse, we flip the set that way and we flip the set that way. And so we had to build in the design, everything was symmetrical, right? Like the bridges and the houses were kind of symmetrical, so you could always be flipping and not tell,
Right,
because
you've done it, yeah.
Yeah, because the sets were all symmetrical. You could shoot them from both sides, and it was kind of the same. But the audience couldn't tell because the backgrounds were not symmetrical. So it was only the immediate stuff, you know.
Wow.
It was a bit of a brain teaser for everyone. And then in the end, we were like, because of the scale of the fighting, I was like, well, so now we're just building it up the road. But it's cool. It's fun to build a giant thing as well, you know, sometimes. Just to go there and be like, oh my God, we made a village. But it's cool that you guys have a studio. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's like, we're really excited about it, because we love those sweeteners, you know, we love to
We used it on
continue
Gray
to-
Man already.
Yeah.
We broke
Oh,
it
you
in.
did? Okay,
Yeah, we
awesome.
broke it in already.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
I mean, we're big on reshoots. Like, it's part
yeah,
of our
that's great.
process.
No, it's
Iterate. You know, we always plan for them. We reshoot while we're shooting quite a bit. You know, we'll look at, we're the guys who, when we're done, we
that's
go to
interesting.
editorial. We'll look at what we've got. We're really insistent on getting it as, you know, the editor's got to work to get it as close as possible, get some music in it, so that we can process and go, miss that close-up.
Yeah.
There's a better transition here. We blew that scene, you know, like, you know, we're missing the story. And so before that set gets torn down, we're back on it, reshooting,
Sure.
and then on to the next thing. And we tend to find a way to compress it all and capture it within the predetermined amount of time. And then usually when we get to the end, there's probably 2 to 3 days of reshoots we do, like 2 months after working with the material.
Oh, that's
you know?
just like a bigger version of the
Bigger version of that, where you have those things that you just didn't catch along the way. But that's like, it's a really, again, focused discipline. Like, we're very anal about, like, you know, making sure we get in the edit room with all the pieces that we possibly can.
Well, frankly, the movies show, I think that, the movies show that, because I think in the work, in your work, I always find that the scenes are always, the scene work is so clean that it always does, I'm like, you can almost feel like, wow, it feels like impossible to get, like, just in the day.
Right.
Because it makes sense, and the punchline happens, and the transition happens, and it all kind of is
Timing
there.
and refinement.
But you're right, it's
just like-
revision.
It's like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, but also to have it feel natural is the second.
Yeah.
That's almost impossible.
Yeah,
also.
right.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, not to lose that. Yeah. So how do you, with post-production,
Yeah.
how do you approach it? Are you very like, do you like to sit back and sort of what your relationship with an editor? Do you like the editor to have some space, or are you very involved early on?
It's kind of like I do, like I like to look at the movie as we're shooting it. When I draw the movie, I draw it kind of in cut. I draw it in cut order, you know, like I'll redraw the same frame, you know, because like it's a cut back to that same shot.
Wow.
That's how but also it helps, you know, then that the editor has that, and they're like, oh, okay, you have it.
Are they cutting to your boards?
They cut to my boards just to kind of basically be like, that was the original.
Okay,
this
so
was
here's
the
what
original feeling.
it was, and here's where I think we can make some adjustments.
And then also like I'll be like, oh cool, that thing I thought did work, or oh shit, like you might have to toy with that little part there,
Right.
because like it looked good on paper, but it didn't land the way I thought it would. And there have been times when I've, like you guys, had to go back inside the movie and go like, oh, we really just need a big close-up of like him doing whatever it is so we can stick that in there. That's kind of during production, and then in post, I take 2 weeks at the very end of the movie, I take off, and then I come back and watch it fresh as I can. And then from there, then it's just, we start at the beginning and just start trying to sand it down into whatever. It's always just like epically long. That's always always the problem. I don't think I've seen a rough cut that's like under 4 hours, like ever for any movie I've ever done. So it's really, to me,
do you overshoot?
I overshoot, and I don't think I am.
Yeah.
It's weird. I feel like I'm being super efficient, and I'm like, or I feel like there's always a ton of material. On Army of the Dead, because 99% handheld, the movie, right? And it's John and I was the B camera, John was the A camera. We cross-shot most of the movie because I really wanted to kind of make it, more organic and more, and being able to cross-shoot, like you get both sides in the performance, and it's nice. I hadn't really done that. I in the past, I'd always pretty much shot one camera, and every now and then a second camera, very rarely. I'm kind of a one camera guy for a long time. Just cross-shooting was really liberating, because it was like, wow, look, we got 2 for 1. That was crazy. Like, who knew? Like, you don't have to like, okay, turn the whole thing around. And partly because I think I DP'd that movie as well, so it was a different, energy was really intense because I never sat down the entire movie, didn't sit down, the entire time. And so like, if I'm standing, like we're all standing, like I'm not gonna, there's gonna be no, what I mean? I was like, let's go. Like,
You gotta move.
Let's shoot.
Yeah.
I think the main thing that the actors had to learn was that the reset was super fast.
Right.
Like they would go, like say they're walking and talking down this whole thing and they're supposed to land here. I'd be like, cut. And then I would run back to the beginning. I'd be like, okay. And they'd be like, what the fuck? We just thought we could get a sip of water or something. I'm like, no, get back
Let's
here.
go. I got a camera.
I'm ready. I'm not gonna And so I think that was the hugest hurdle, was to get everyone to like reset, because they just were used to this movie set cadence, or it took a while to get the cameras back to one. It was just, frankly, and I was like, no, we're not gonna do it. We're not doing it that way. We're gonna get back fast. So anyway, that was an interesting thing, but we grind away on it. And then I really try and get sound and music in as quick as I can. Chunky will give me, and Hans does the same thing, like suites of music pretty early, so we can start cutting that. And then otherwise I'll steal from other music that those guys have made. If it was Hans or Junkie or whatever, I can kind of get, in the style of. Because I like to turn the shots over also to visual effects as early as possible.
Yeah, because you got to get.
Because I want to know what that's going to be, and if there's iterations or it gets fixed or it doesn't make sense or something to cut with, or when you show it to the studio, they have the best. You're putting the best foot forward.
Yeah, that you're not asking them to imagine.
Yeah, because
which often doesn't work.
Doesn't always work. Even though everyone watches rough cuts, but it's different. I think it's just different.
And they read the script.
But at that scale, it's different. It's not fair.
Can I ask about that? And I'm just curious, because you, coming up through your career, you are a visionary, you're a maverick director. What has a relationship been like with studios for you? How do you view a relationship? And again, I'm asking more from the perspective of like, somebody gets their first job in the business. How do they not get crushed by the machine? But how do they maintain a relationship where they don't get blacklisted either, as sort of a difficult personality? Yeah,
it's interesting because I have had an interesting relationship with the studio over the years, and I've always felt respected by the studios, and I always feel like they've sort of seen the value in what I do. I think I always feel a little bit managed, as a filmmaker, like I always feel like they're
telling you one thing and then they're in a room talking about something else.
Yeah, they're just trying to keep me like, if we can keep making our movie, it's gonna be amazing. So, but and that's why, for good or for bad, I've produced and released a director's cut for every movie I've ever made, right? So to me, the director's cuts are always better. They're always better than the movie that I released. And
That goes through testing and studio notes
it's-
and more testing
yeah, and I always
more
just
studio
feel like
notes.
and I'm cool with the notes, but there's a point where I just go like, no, this
Yeah.
is the movie. I
Yeah.
mean, I get the note, but this is the movie. And so with Watchmen, the movie is the length it is because of IMAX. And the director's cut is longer because I wasn't held to the,
Right.
because the film would fall off. If the
Right.
room was humid,
Yeah.
the projection booth was humid, the film would fall off because it was
Right.
it was
Right.
literally,
Yeah.
we had made the movie, it was like a minute longer. It couldn't stay on the thing.
On the spool.
So like that's when they were like, okay, it's whatever it is, 242 is it. And then that's it. So we were like, okay, that's all the movie is.
Yeah.
We can like trim like until we got it there. And so I felt like there was stuff that I just didn't get 100% to do in that movie. And now like 300 is not a long movie. I think it's 210 or something like that.
Yeah.
So but that was a movie where I was really, because of the visual effects element and the budget wasn't that high and the amount of shoot days was pretty short, that was a really to get the movie that we got was like a miracle, let alone anything long.
In these situations, though, where you have an assembly for your movie that's much longer than what you're ultimately going to bring it down to, even for the director's cut.
Sure.
Setting issues of the studio aside, what's your process for getting it there? Do you use outside eyes, fresh eyes to help you with that process?
I don't think at that point, when you look at a 4-hour cut of a movie, you can pretty much be like, we don't need that. What are we doing? We're going to really show them walk all the way over there and come back? Whatever. That stuff's, I think, in the first, there's an easy swipe of the table in those early days. And then, it'll get to the point where you start to go I really like that scene, but we got to get rid of it. It doesn't do anything.
Right.
And those are also pretty easy. In my experience, a lot of it has to do with just tone, that feels too rough, or that's too many mallets in the forehead. Rorschach shouldn't hit the guy 5 times. Do we really need to see his brains come out? And I'd be like, yeah, you kind of do. So these are the conversations that I'd be having with the studio, can we just, Jeff was asking me that exact question, here's the 5 things we'd want you to cut, what do you think? And I'd be like, okay, 2 of them I can do,
Yeah.
It's like that, it's like, you guys know, it's like it's like there's a negotiation.
It's a
bit.
push and pull. I think you've spent hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah,
and,
it is a, and by the way, and that's in some ways why, for me, the director's cut concept was a thing that at least I could be like, well, at least I know it will exist, so that's fine.
Yeah.
Batman versus Superman, I think, is a perfect example of there was no plan for a director's cut except for home video in the day. They would always come to me because those director's cuts, even on Batman versus Superman, I don't, it's some outrageous amount of the total after theatrical release was generated by the director's cut. It's 80% of all the revenue came from the director's cut.
Yeah.
And which is the thing that, if you look at the spreadsheet for the movie as a piece of business at the beginning of the endeavor, that line doesn't exist, right? And then in the end represents this massive amount of commerce for the film. So I don't know. So in that way, and Justice League, frankly, wouldn't exist if I hadn't really had that as the movie that I really wanted to make, And I'm not saying that I'm trying to pull a fast one or, it's a clever ruse.
Yeah.
It's just a teeny bit. Right. But I always feel I am, sometimes I'm up against commerce, and
there's a lot of strategy
natural.
as a filmmaker involved in getting your movie to a theater. There's a lot of ownership that needs to happen along the way from a lot of people who wrote you a lot of big checks.
100%.
And so there's a management on the scale of movies that we do that extends beyond the work you're doing on the movie. And it was something we found with Marvel. We got better and better at with that as it went on.
Interesting.
Better and better at interacting with marketing in a certain way, or thinking through or looking at what markets we needed in order for this movie to be successful. Who's going to India, to talk to the Indian market. It's emerging now, and we're getting clips back from Infinity War showing how crazy audiences are going in theaters. We didn't go there for Infinity. We better go there for Endgame and interact with these fans that are emerging and want to feel like they're part of the big experience that's going on. This is sort of getting in a bigger context now and bigger questions of like the business in general. Do you feel like, there's two questions here and then we'll wrap it up. One is, do you feel like there's two different film businesses? There's sort of the movies we all make, which are these large, popular movies. I tend to say that like our mission as filmmakers, because we grew up in a big Italian family where we told stories to each other on Sundays, is to be inclusive, and it's to create a sense of community. It's to bind people through storytelling. Sure. Something you put out into the world, and that millions of people, no matter what race, color, creed, what other country they're from, level of poverty or wealth, right, can come together and experience a story in a very similar way and can cheer and laugh and cry and have this, this profound experience, hopefully that sits with them the same way that Star Wars did for you and Star Wars and Empire did for us, and go down the list of movies. And then there feels like at times to me, and this is just somebody who, as a film fan, spent years watching movies, I feel like I grow out of stuff that feels a little bit like it's intentionally creating a barrier of entry, that there's an intellectual barrier of entry, or there's a artistic level of sophistication that also may create a barrier of entry. And I start now looking at things in a way where I go, well, is that communal and inclusive, or is that really intended for a niche audience that, it's supposed to make somebody feel better about themselves, and a collection of critics around it that, need to feel better about themselves. I mean, how do you feel looking at the business as a whole as an artist? Do you feel like you're working in one side of the business?
I've always, that's really interesting. I haven't thought about it in those terms, and it's really interesting. I think about it, because I'm a huge fan of myth, and I love mythology, and I believe mythology is relatable because it's collective, sort of archetypal experiences that people have anywhere in the world and have had for thousands of years. And so, the sort of Joseph Campbellian archetypes are a thing that have always been a huge fan of. And, how they're rendered, I tend not to be too critical of, but I know the difference between, something that's mythological and something that's maybe not as much, And I guess I fall naturally into sort of this, like I said, into this sort of mythological sort of filmmaking realm. Although I do think that my natural tendencies are kind of dark. It's just like, I don't, And
you have a darker vision of mythology. You're attracted to Icarus. You're attracted to
100%.
What is the flaw in this mythology that makes it more complex?
And deconstruction is a thing that I'm a big fan of, because I think that it goes in a circle. When you deconstruct something, you actually figure out why it works. You know what I mean? It's like just a thing that I've always been into. And so in that way, in a weird way, I've kind of battled my PG-13 roots, like where I live, because like what I ask for from the movies is budgets and scale.
It's got to justify.
It's got to, so it's got to, like, it needs this audience. And in a lot of ways, that's why I love Netflix, is because they, I kind of feel like with Netflix, the barrier is softer, Like, what 13-year-old didn't watch Army of the Dead? Probably zero.
It is softer because they can take their phone and go in the bathroom and,
it's 100%.
right, and hit play, and there's nobody there to stop them.
Yeah, like
there's
when
no
I snuck
ticket
in
taker that can
Excalibur.
Can I see your ID?
Yeah, I was like
right?
not supposed to see that movie.
Yeah.
I was 11 years old, but it was like, whoa, what happened? My brain.
But this leads to my last question, which is sort of speaking of like Netflix, and we were talking about this before the cameras rolled, but disruption in the business, right? Do we feel like, and you're a technologist, do we feel like two-dimensional approach to filmmaking, this sort of projected approach, is going to be predominant in this century, or do we think that we're going to evolve into some other form of storytelling that's perhaps more immersive, or some new technology?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that has a better delivery system that's more impactful?
Well, I mean, we've all got, wired into our homes now.
Right.
I mean, already the pipe is laid, for that delivery system, regardless of what form it takes, in our lives.
Yeah.
We have it in our pocket, frankly. That'll just be like how someone younger and smarter than me uses those tools. I don't know what that's going to be, but hopefully it's cool. When I'm like, super crusty, I'll be enjoying my Oculus goggles, going like, "Arr, this is amazing." Maybe not. Maybe I'll still be grumpy. But I wish this was in a movie theater. Yeah. But yeah, I do think that in a weird way, those experiences are kind of diverging. The theatrical experience and the sort of
The things you can do at home?
just like the kind of the we call it a movie, made for television, whatever, a movie that's only on Netflix, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then like a theatrical film that's in the theater, they're the same thing, but I feel like there's something's changing about how they're perceived. And I think that's just an evolution that is natural to having there be two distinct ways of watching a movie now. Like the pandemic kind of really
Supercharged it, right?
Yeah. And so I think that, we'll see how that goes. But I love the theatrical experience. It's, you guys have made movies, the biggest movies ever made for the theater.
Right.
So
It'll be eventized, I think,
interesting.
moving forward. There's no question, right? Because you have to be able to find a reason to leave your home, right? You have to force the audience to find a reason to leave their home. We always say it's FOMO, right? It's sort of,
like everyone's going to what?
Yeah, or am I going to be part of the Twitter conversation? Am I going to be part of the social media conversation? Am I going to get the meme that comes out on a Saturday about the movie? Am I going to be able to participate in that? So unless you're creating that kind of content, it's really hard to justify leaving, the audience leaving their home to go see it and spend the money to go see it. They have cheaper options now. Everyone has 60-inch televisions, right? Like it's just
shut the lights off.
Yeah, or people have just become accustomed to watching things on their phone. It's just easier for them, I feel like we're definitely reaching that point where we might be like the last of a kind, and that there's going to be a new kind of, and I know you've got a lot of kids, I got a lot of kids.
Yeah.
I watch their habits and I go, I don't know that I would be successful in their future, as a storyteller.
I don't, because we kind of, we've kind of forced the kids to watch our movies,
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I don't mean the ones we made, but the ones we like.
Yeah,
you
for
know?
sure.
And I think that they are like, okay, fine, I'll watch it. But I don't know that they want to necessarily.
You never know. Give it some time, see where it goes.
Yeah, that's true.
But look, we need to wrap up now.
Oh, okay,
but I
cool.
just want to say in closing, one of my favorite things as a director is going to see a piece of cinema in whatever form it may be, and having two things happen to me is like, number one, I'm just blown away for some reason. And number two, I have no idea how it was done, how it was achieved, how it was made. And I had one of my favorite moments like that, and I don't have a lot of them, was when I went to see 300. And the visual texture and energy of that film just blew me away. And I just sat there and going, oh my God, I have no idea how he made this movie.
And then you get depressed because you walk out going, I don't know how to make that.
I know.
Like
So we spent probably after 300 came out. We spent a long time trying to figure out how you made that movie, and I'm grateful for today to hear a little bit more about
it's
the
kind.
process. So thanks.
Well, thank you guys. I couldn't have more respect for what you guys do. It's amazing, and I really appreciate you guys having me come out and just rap about the movie business. It's like we were talking about. Like I don't hang out with directors really.
Right.
Directors don't really hang out with directors. Because you're on set. People are always like, how are the directors? I'm like, I don't know directors. How do I know them? Like I don't. Like,
they're directing
their movies. Yeah, why would they be here? So it's really fun to talk about and hear about different ways of doing stuff, and really it's great. And I learned a lot today. So thanks.
Well, we wrap up with these things we call small bites, and there's sort of these rapid fire questions that we
cool.
do. And it's just like one word answers or however you want to, but we try to keep it fun and fast. So if you could direct any other genre you have yet to, what would it be? So a genre you haven't done yet.
Western, I think.
That'd be awesome. I'd love to see that.
If you could give one piece of advice to yourself in your early career, what would it be?
There's so many things, but I think it would just be to, don't compromise, don't do it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, it's not. We found over time it's interesting that like you start to prioritize how you feel getting out of the bed in the morning, right? Do I feel happy with myself or am I angry with myself? And we reached a certain point in our careers where like the only priority is, are we happy getting out of bed?
Yeah.
To do what we do every day. And that is, the less you compromise seems to be the more happier
I think
you
it's
are.
100% true.
Yeah. What's your favorite treat or snack from Crafty?
Lately it's been, on the last movie we had these kind of little Fig Newton kind of, they're not Fig Newtons, but they are kind of, they're not with fig inside of them, but they look like a Fig Newton. I don't know who makes them, but we always have them now, and it's like, I think it got me a little bit on the last.
Yeah, that's your move. That's a good.
They're not as low calorie as they pretend to be like organic.
Oh, yeah.
Really
I think I know the.
I don't think they really are. I think they're candy, basically.
Yeah. Ours are Dove chocolates, and we have like foil littered all around.
Dove dark chocolate bites.
Oh,
they're
yeah,
just
that's
like we
amazing.
pop them like every 3 minutes.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that's terrible.
If you could work with anyone you haven't yet, who is dead or alive, who would that be?
Dead or alive? Wow, that's good. Well, it's funny. We were just talking the other day. I was a huge Max von Sydow fan.
Oh,
and
yeah, I
really,
love him.
The awesome pick.
Yeah, that is a great pick. Favorite director of all time?
Probably Scorsese.
Yeah.
Just consistency and probably the movies that I saw that influenced me stylistically the most were his movies. There's one thing you say like, oh, go see Star Wars. Star Wars is sort of thematically effective, but like as far as style goes, it's got to be Brian De Palma a little bit too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We love De Palma as well.
If you could watch any piece of
Italians.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I know.
Tony
That's part of it, I
Iommi.
guess.
Get on the
If
list.
you could watch any piece of content for the first time again, what would it be?
You have to ask yourself the question, like, so say you say Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
Does it work for you now? Like, am I me
Yeah.
then, or am I me now seeing it for the first time? I don't know.
It might be too risky to do that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if I
Yeah.
saw it, like I've shown it to my kids and seen their reaction. I'm like, wait a minute. Now this
Oh,
is
no, that's a
amazing.
hard one to bring. I try to
it's
bring my
even-
kids.
Your
That's
point is you
amazing.
can't watch anything for the first time again.
The
That's-
Matrix, I
yeah.
guess, maybe, or
They
something.
start
like that.
making
That's
fun of the
more modern.
VFX
Yeah.
pretty quickly.
Yeah.
My kids are always like
It's a
poking
cool.
holes in it. Yeah.
It's a cool thing to think about, just for that reason. Like, are you nostalgic? Like, I'm a huge Excalibur fan. I love Excalibur. I love John Borman. I love Excalibur.
I love Excalibur. I've
And I
probably seen
remember,
that
like,
more than
I had
anything.
like one of my guys on the movie. I've been talking about it, like, and DJ, my visual effects supervisor, and I were like, we're always dorking out to each other, like reciting lines from the movie. And our friend, who was our video assist guy, was like going like, what is this movie you guys are like? We're like, Excalibur, you gotta watch it. Like, how have you not seen it? Like, we were like mocking him for like, weeks on end. Finally, he watched it, and he comes in and he goes, I think you guys are just really nostalgic for this movie.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? I go, it didn't blow your mind? He's like, no, it did not blow my mind. I was like, I'm not sure that you can work for me anymore. Like, he was like, what? I'm like, I'm just kidding. It's fine. But it was like one of those things where I was just like, couldn't wait for him to come in, like having had a religious experience, and he just came in like, it's kind of an old movie. It's kind of boring. And I was like, what? It's like, it's
It's got
funny.
like every great British actor of that generation. in it.
literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I get the chills just thinking about when Lancelot shows up at the end.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Like
The old wound.
Yeah. Well, thank you again,
No,
man.
thank you.
This has
That's
been
amazing.
a blast. And all of you out there, thank you for tuning in and listening. Manja Bene. We'll see you next time on Pizza Film School.
Cheers.